All right, so it is Saturday, November 16th, 7:09 a.m., and this discussion intends to be the 14th installment of In the Grip of ThermostatAnon, which is a play on the original title of this video with the acronymic title here, which was originally titled In the Grip of ThermostatAnon. And this series has been and continues to be a justification of that piece, which, as you can see from the text that I'm filming right now, was censored by YouTube because YouTube claimed that its content promoted, glorified, or incited acts of violence through harmful conspiracy theories. And in fact, what we have been doing is demonstrating that the video does precisely the opposite. That is, that it satirizes, parodies, insults, and otherwise comedically, right, criticizes in the way of The Onion, I suppose, very much like The Onion, the political satire in this piece, which creates a narrative in which there's a struggle to preserve democracy, and that struggle occurs across multiple universes, including the what is it, Jotaverse, the Marvel-verse, the George Lucas-verse, the DC-averse, the overall frame of the universe in which, the multiverse in which all of these universes are situated. We've been referring to lately as the meta-multi sci-fi comiverse. But that's slightly misleading because the universe, that universe also includes elements from our universe, which may or may not, be entirely a comic universe. Although, in a dark sort of way, certainly the events of January 6, 2021 were a kind of comedy, although, a very, the expression is, black humored comedy. Gallows humor is another word, and that, I guess, is particularly fitting given the attempts of individuals involved in various terrorist organizations who wanted to hang Mike Pence. So anyway, that's where we are, and it's installment 14. I think today I'll create a separate playlist because I don't think that we have one, and then I might run that one for a while and just call it In the Grip of ThermostatAnon. And since we do have 14 items that we can place, or will have 14 items that we can place in that playlist once I complete this discussion. Let's go over here. Unfortunately, on some of these, it's a little bit hard to read all of the text. I don't think this changes as I move this around. No, it doesn't. All right. Okay. So I'm gonna have to guess, or just elide what Mr. Pence might be saying here, because I can't read it the way that the slides have fallen, and I don't have the original frame for this particular moment in the story. So here's his good angel over here. I think he had a bad angel on this side. I'm not sure. Maybe there was another one with a bad angel, or maybe there's just the good angel. I'm not sure. Let's see what the heading says. Mike, is that one man? I don't. Hauser's growling at something. I'm not sure what. Are you protecting your bones? Mike One Man Pence divided between his loyalty to the Constitution that he has sworn to protect. That's a that's a dependent clause, right? Is that what they refer to those as? In other words, the that is used as opposed to the which, because you can't take it out. The Constitution that he has sworn to protect, not just Constitution, comma, which he has sworn to protect, right? Loyalty to the Constitution that he has sworn to protect, and his desire to impress the evil entity known as Q-Magatherion, and of course that's the play on Megatherion, which is the Greek word for the beast, right? And then because he's referring to the beast there and the Q-Magatherion, we did some beastly stuff with Mr. Ted Cruz over here on this side. Let's see if I'm using the... Oh, it's not dependent. It's restrictive, right? It's a restrictive clause. Okay, so if I go to... just for a moment, just to explain the difference. This is our page. I'm going to type in restrictive clause. A restrictive clause is a type of relative clause that provides essential information about a noun or noun phrase in a sentence. So that, can I say that again? So that is providing essential information about a noun or a noun phrase in a sentence. And the essential information that is providing here concerns the relationship between the Constitution and Mike Pence's sworn oath to protect it, right? And that's essential information. Essential. Not inessential, but essential. And hence the division, I suppose, because Mike Pence, like a lot of the friends and followers of the Magatherion, the great beast, also AKA Donald J. Trump, right? Like a lot of those, is sort of a yes-sayer. And very hesitant, not to do what the master requires of him, and hence the split. And the good angel, of course, is somewhat, taken aback by the split, saying, "I don't get it. How is that even a question?" And I guess this is the blue side. Well, I'm a Christian, ... and then the red side is unfortunately I can't see what it says, so we have to just use our imaginations and fill it in, But I still want to. Maybe it's but I'd still really desire the affection and praise of the great beast, or something like that, but I don't know. I really don't. Worse or worst is in there. Anyway, it's he's divided. The good angel is questioning how that's even possible. And as we made clear from the word that, this is essential. This is essential information. He swore an oath to protect the Constitution. That's the That's the key here, right? So it should be a non-issue. But, you know, somehow he's questioning it. The questioning, points to perhaps the rejection on the part of the Guardians of the Galaxy and, from the Marvel Universe and Martian Manhunter and the rest of the Justice League in the DC universe of Mike Pence's Hero and the appointing of an alternate. We haven't met him yet, so I won't give him away. That beast thing, as I said, kind of spills over into the next frame, and it plays with. Around this time, Ted Cruz. This is Ted Cruz. If you don't recognize him with his new look. Around this time, Ted Cruz grew a beard. I don't know if it was the first beard that he ever grew, but it was the first beard that I ever, I became aware of that he sported, and I guess he did so to fit in more with the kind of I don't know, it give him a more of a rural, sort of trailer look to fit in with the terrorists at the insurrection event that J.D. Vance referred to as a peaceful protest in a public space, even though it involved the destruction of federal property, murder, and violence and threats of violence, that some of which were never realized on over here, but certainly the threats were there. But so the barbarian, plays with the Ted Cruz is growing the beard, as I said, to perhaps fit it, give him more of a rural, trailer style look, in keeping with a lot of the bearded male activity, that bearded white male activity, that went into the making of the January 6th insurrection event, and of course, the word barbarian comes from the Greek, barbaros, and barbaros the Greeks had two words, right, for stranger, and one was a xenos, as in xenophobia, which Ted Cruz participates in as part of the Q-MAGAnon movement, who have recently threatened to deport all recent immigrants, from the United States. Now, whether they can do it or not, is questionable, but that's part of the program. And so the word xenos, which actually, for the Greeks, meant more like, stranger, as opposed to barbarian, which meant foreign, right? So you could be a Greek and be a xenos. And when Dionysus, the stranger, arrives somewhere, and there's a wonderful book that talks about Dionysus in this way, and I can't remember the author's name, unfortunately. I know it's French, because I recall this particular scholarship was originally written in French and translated into English. I read it in English. I don't read French very well. Saying very well, that's that's giving me a lot of credit. Meaning, I will recognize a few words, right? But I can't sit down and read French. And part of it is, and it's been the difficulty for me with learning foreign languages. It belongs to that whole, sphere of dyslexia, dysgraphia, dyscalculia, that makes certain kinds of decoding and processing, difficult, including learning other languages and including certainly reading in other languages. I've talked about that before and how I, managed to graduate, college with certain limitations, sort of, in a certain way by cheating my way through and navigating the space of some of the requirements very slowly. So it took me 8 years to graduate, as a bachelor of arts, as opposed to the ordinary 4, because I would often have to drop a class if that class had too many expectations for essays, written in class, within a certain limited amount of time, which was very difficult for me to perform. And at that time, not a lot of allowances were made for these types of undiagnosed, limitations. I don't want to say disabilities because, as most of my viewers know, I don't really like that word and I don't really believe in it. But that was a long aside about the word barbaros and distinguishing it from xenos. I'm not sure how I got there. But in any case, I was talking about Dionysus and this great book that talks about Dionysus the stranger. And when he arrives, he arrives as a xenos, but he's always a Greek, right? He's not from another land. He's like the stranger from within. And in this case, barbarian, means, the opposite, and it's also the word for beard. It's like so bearded others, right? And these barbarians from other lands, like the beard, right, inspired me to think of it that way. And then I split the word, barbarian and barb, the beard, and then the Aryan thing, because these folks seem to be so much about white supremacy and racism, and that word, Aryan, is obviously one of those Nazi-derived, expressions of what this construct of this ridiculous construct of white supremacy. And we've talked about that before in the whole analysis of the Great Chain of Being and all of this stuff, and the invention of whiteness, and how the invention of whiteness occurs pretty much simultaneously or in sync with the creation of the idea of race, and that invention always was and always will be, right, a support of slavery and other means, economic or otherwise, of oppressing and repressing peoples. So Ted the Barbarian Cruz sports a brand new look reflecting the dignity of his office in service to our American people's democracy. This one especially created to something that starts with an H. Oh, maybe honor again? I don't know. Honor the hallowed event of presidential inauguration, which follows the free and fair election process of which we are all so rightly proud to be a part. And does anybody recognize what figure of speech this utilizes? Anyone? Well, just in case ThermostatAnon is watching and accuses me once again of inspiring terrorism and enlisting stochastic terrorism, I just want to point out that this term, sarcasm, right, is the use of irony to mock or convey contempt. Okay, so if ThermostatAnon, if you're out there, Okay, I'm going to go back, right? Are you listening? Okay, this is sarcasm. The use of irony to mock or convey contempt, right? And then, okay, we're going to minimize that. Okay, so ThermostatAnon, are you listening? Okay, so Ted the Barbarian Cruz, sports. Okay, so see how sports is used sarcastically here, ThermostatAnon, because generally, we say that that's like a friendly word, right? A brand new look. So like this all sounds like an advertisement, like sport, a brand new look, right? So ThermostatAnon, are you listening? So we're using this language, this commercial language, right, of beautification, and we're talking about dignity in the office and service of our American people's democracy. This one's specially created to honor the hallowed event of presidential inauguration, which follows the free and fair election process of which we are so rightly proud to be a part. And then this is the look. It's sarcasm, all right? ThermostatAnon. And, okay, if the FBI, once again, is investigating the criminality and those individuals responsible for the destruction and crimes of that particular date, January 6, 2021, this is not really how Ted Cruz looks. All right, so don't use this as your in your FBI wanted poster, because this is only how he looks in the meta multi sci-fi comiverse. All right, and elsewhere he looks and he's saying something about gorgons. If you know who they are, gorgons are Medusa's sisters, and I don't know why he's saying all this G stuff. I can't remember. There must be a reason. The alliteration of the G, and maybe it just goes with the gorgons. I'm not sure. Let's look up gorgon and see if there's anything that helps us with the exploration of that particular alliterative. Gorgonzola cheese, Gorgon City Shrine, Gorgonzola. Let's see. In Greek mythology, the Gorgons were three female monsters with snakes for hair who could turn anyone to stone who looked at them. Okay, so Medusa and her sisters, as I said. Features: wings, claws, tusks, scales, giant boar tusks, bronze hands, and impenetrable skin, I suppose. Let's see what the etymology is. Terrible. Gorgo, from Gorgos, terrible. So I guess, since there's two G's in the word, Gorgos, maybe the alliteration is an attempt to underscore how terrible Ted Cruz is. That's possibly what motivated that. Let's see if we do a search for terrible Ted Cruz. Anything comes up. I don't want to be accused of referring to Ted Cruz as terrible if he's really not terrible. I mean, that would be slanderous. Okay, so here's one. Ted Cruz's seriously terrible policy positions. Humans against Ted Cruz. Well, so this site agrees with me that there's something terrible and beastly about Ted Cruz. Let's see. 10 reasons Ted Cruz needs to go. We support a stable democracy. This is about the organizations, I guess. More Americans voted in 2020 than any other presidential election, with a record-breaking turnout of 154.6 million Americans and 11.3 million Texans. At the same time, Cruz and other usurpers attempted to disenfranchise these voters by overthrowing the U.S. government on January 6, 2021. Days before the coup, Cruz organized 11 senators to deny the Electoral College results, of which he was the first to object, which helped Trump push baseless election-like claims. Ted will stop at nothing to get Trump's approval. Embarrassing and dangerous. So without Ted Cruz, it's possible that Trump might not have been inspired, to support and stoke, the fires that resulted in, or the, emotional, rage and fires, emotional fires that began can I say conflagration? The conflagration that was, January 6th, 2021. And if ThermostatAnon is watching and claiming that, that I'm promoting a conspiracy theory that these folks burned all of Washington, D.C. to the ground, I'm using metaphor. That's a metaphor. So the fire that I'm using, in these examples is metaphor for the rage and anger of these folks that participated in this event. So it's possible, that the event wouldn't have happened if Mr. Cruz didn't have this great idea, right? That he came up with in his. Wasn't he, yeah. Does it say that here? Wasn't he in Cancun at some point, during one of these storms that was decimating Texas, and he took a little vacation so that he at least wouldn't be threatened, rather than, staying in his constituency and helping people survive. Which to me, seems cowardly and ethically indefensible. But I suppose if you're a barbarian, you have a different attitude about things like this. 2, we are a dependable energy system. But we all know who isn't. Think of our senator at the airport leaving his, oh yeah, here we go. Yeah, this one. This is what I was talking about. So I should have just waited. I didn't need to bring that up. Leaving his 29.3 million constituents behind on his way to Cancun does anybody remember Ted Cruz in Cancun? On his way to Cancun during one of the worst climate disasters our state has ever faced. We all remember him ditching his elected duties, opting for a luxury hotel experience while every other Texan was stuck in the freezing cold. People died while he went on vacation. Not again. 3, we are all for health care for all. Roughly 1 million Texans do not have health care, and Ted Cruz isn't helping. Thank him for needlessly upending Obamacare with the repeal of the individual mandate in the GOP's tax bill. Moreover, forcing sick and poor people to pay way more for less is a trend for him. Back in 2013, during his first Senate term, he filibustered on the topic, making us suffer through reading of Green Eggs and Ham, unserious schemes for an unserious politician. We can end gun violence. Texas leads the nation in mass shootings this year because knuckle draggers. So that's kind of derogatory reference, to the I don't know, maybe the association here with the gorilla is, as opposed to the Gorgon, also plays into the repetition of those G's, whatever those alliterative G's are trying to say. knuckle draggers like Cruz are blocking common sense legislation. Even when John Quorum supported bipartisan measures, Ted insists on being part of the problem. His A-plus rating from the NRA apparently comes with strings, worth $176,274 in campaign contributions, and those have just gone up as the years have gone by. That, as an aside. Because he has no backbone, he prioritized these lobbyists over grieving parents in the days after the preventable Uvalde massacre, spending these crucial moments at the 2022 NRA convention unforgivable. He gets more money from the gun lobby than most of these senators combined, and adamantly, right, refuses to support any kind of limitation, in spite of the fact that, and it's mentioned here, Texas leads the nation in mass shootings. And thank you, Senator Cruz, because you're a big part of being responsible for that, just as you are for being responsible for the events of January 6th. We are a just immigration system. Ted Cruz, who was born in Canada, irony of ironies, right? Irony of ironies. Ted Cruz was born in Canada to a Cuban father, right? Who was born in Canada to a Cuban father, refuses to help immigrants. Okay, all right. Like, okay, let's since we're talking with ThermostatAnon, and we're trying to help ThermostatAnon understand like the way that we use figures, right? And we're introducing various figurative language elements to ThermostatAnon, and this one, it seems to me it's pretty clear that that our video, right, the one that I'm making right now, won't be in trouble for this utterance. But since we're exploring these ideas, let's just add a few terms to the list. We've talked about metonymy, we've talked about synecdoche, we've talked about satire, we've talked about irony, we've talked about allegory. Let's see. Are there other ones? I'm sure there are that I'm eliding here. But in this instance, let's look up a couple of terms. Okay, so let's look up this one first. And this one isn't figurative language, but we're just going to look up this for the definition of this term, and then we'll come back. I promise we'll come back. Hypocrisy. Hypocrisy is the practice of claiming to have moral standards or beliefs to which one's own behavior does not conform. Pretense. His target was the hypocrisy of this is the example of suburban life. All right. Okay. So hypocrisy. So let's come back here and think about what's going on here. In fact, you can probably go up and find examples of hypocrisy in all of these, right? But the one that seems clearest occurs here. So if ThermostatAnon is out there, can ThermostatAnon identify the hypocrisy here? Okay, I'll help. It's that Ted Cruz is one of the anti-immigrationists. He wasn't born in the United States, and his father was Cuban. And there's nothing wrong with that, Ted. And we're not criticizing you because of that. But you do realize that that makes you part of the United States immigration system, right? Do you get that? So being against immigration in the United States is an example of hypocrisy for that very reason, because there's a contradiction in who you are and what you pretend to believe. All right? Ted Cruz, who was born in Canada to a Cuban father, refuses to help immigrants, even before Cruz turned his back on more than 800,000 dreamers, denying them a pathway to citizenship. He took a Trumpian and inhumane stance on immigration. His proposal, hunting and deporting 12 million undocumented immigrants. And of course, this is exactly what the Q-Maganons want and have promised to do in the new administration, in the second administration. Other solutions of his to the immigration crisis are just as barbarian. There's the word. They think he's a barbarian too. So I'm not the only one. Oh, okay. That's a great relief. Co-sponsoring tightened asylum restrictions, and more recently introducing a bill that would continue building the border and add unnecessary border patrol agents. Six, we are for reproductive freedom. Ted Cruz is as bad as it gets on reproductive rights and abortion access, and is the last man you want in the business of regulating your uterus. A longtime advocate for overturning Roe versus Wade and criminalizing abortion, Cruz tried to shut down the government to defund Planned Parenthood targeted low-income people by removing financial, government, and health insurance for assistance for sexual and reproductive health care, and of course, banning abortion nationwide after 20 weeks, even in cases with severe health complications. Seven, we are for economic opportunity and workers' rights. And yet, Ted Cruz, deep in the pockets of big corporations and billionaire donors, like the NRA, always puts corporate interests over hardworking Texans. He has voted against equal pay for equal work. How is that even possible? Like, okay, so women and people of color should get less money because why again? He has voted against, it's almost impossible even to digest this idea. He has voted against equal pay for equal work, filibustered a vote to raise the minimum wage. So if you're not making enough money in Texas, you can blame Ted Cruz, okay? If you need more money and you're in Texas and you work too many hours, you got Ted Cruz to blame. So like, be sure like when you vote, like you know all of this, right? Like vote. We just did, well, Aaron did a piece. Aaron just did a piece. Why do these, he asked me, Aaron asked me, he said, why do these voters in these, rural, deep red states, support policies that are against their own best interests and against the best interests of their children? And I said, I don't know, Aaron, why don't you write a poem about it? And he did. And you can see that that was the last thing that Aaron wanted me to put up on our YouTube channel, which I did. Filibustered a vote to raise the minimum wage and opposes paid family leave and policies, pushing through a tax bill that benefits the super rich at the expense of working people is one of the very, very few things he actually accomplished. So he accomplished that, a tax bill that benefits the super rich at the expense of working people. If that's what you want, vote for Ted Cruz. We know his aspirations. He said it himself. At 18, he wants only to take over the world domination. Yeah, rule everything, be rich, be powerful. So I guess you can excuse him, like, oh, he was a naive 18-year-old. But when I say 18, I don't remember saying shit like this. Sorry, is that offensive if I say shit? But I really don't. At 18, I was pretty I was pretty independent at 18. My mother had remarried, and she had a home in along the coast in Southern California, and she essentially, she when I was about, I don't know, 16, like divided her time largely between Massachusetts, Linfield, Massachusetts, and Southern California. So the last couple of years that I was in high school, I basically, I was on my own. I had to take care of myself. So by the time I was about 16 years old, if I had to, drive to buy my groceries, make my own food, take care of the animals. I had dogs, and I liked it. I liked the independence. But I don't remember, at that time, maybe I had too much to do, but I don't remember at that time ever imagining that I wanted to take over the world. World domination was my aspiration. Yeah, rule everything, rich, be powerful. I just appreciated, that I had the resources that I needed. I had a job. I'd had several jobs by that time, and I worked so that I could afford the gas that I needed to put in my vehicle to go to the store, just like a regular person, and buy the things that I needed and the things that the dogs needed, and of course I was in high school, so I was still going to school at the time. So there was a lot to be done. I probably didn't have the time to fantasize of dominating the world. We are for public education. Texas ranks first in states with the most banned books, with a whopping 1,120 titles, and it's increased again. Like, that's another number that's increased over the last few years. And dead last at 49th place in states with high school diploma holders. Our public education system is in crisis, and Ted would rather defund the institution itself. And that's what they want to do now, right? They want to get rid of the Department of Education, and they really don't really like public education, which is a shame. And my mother was a public school teacher, so and supported me as a single parent with a reasonable paying job. That was a high-paying job for women, and now it's not. I mean, particularly in private education, and I have personal experience with this. Lori was working at Laguna, and how much were you making at Laguna? Lori, can I Lori? She's got her headphones on, so she can't hear me. But anyway, we don't need an exact number, but it was, it's a long drive, from Albuquerque, to Laguna Pueblo, and because of that, she found a place to work here. It's private, it's Catholic school, and the salary is half of what she was making, at Laguna, and so, because we're losing money, right? We're dipping into our, savings right now, before we reach retirement age. She's going back to Laguna because essentially it's public education. As I mentioned, was the case for my mother, is pays more, and is a way that women in particular, at the elementary school level, this was a job that a lot of women held, in the time that I was growing up in the 60s and 70s, and it continues to be, a viable workspace, for women, and whether they have, husbands and families, or families, without husbands, whether they're, crazy cat ladies, or whether they're childless cat ladies, or cat ladies who have children, or non-cat ladies, without children, or non-cat ladies who have children, or, whatever type of ladies they might be. This this institution of public education not only is good for children, but but it's good for the workforce. You know, you just like simple fact, and this doesn't seem to be of much concern with this history, right? And this knowledge, like we can say, Ted Cruz isn't much, concerned with real information and and knowledge and sources of you know verifiable truth, right? He is more interested in that the delights of that apple of ignorance that we talked about recently. But if forced to go public, he'd want Texas students to be saddled with student loans, policed by armed law enforcement on campus, and even more books banned, of course. And the truth is about this party is that they don't want individuals to be educated, because the more educated the individual, the less likely that they are going to vote for the conservative party. We are for basic human decency. There's a reason the former Speaker of the House called him Lucifer in the flesh, and that's because to know Ted Cruz is to loathe Ted Cruz. His college roommate summed it up pretty nicely. Ted Cruz is a nightmare of a human being. I have plenty of problems with his politics, but truthfully, his personality is so awful that 99% of why I hate him is just his personality. If he agreed with me on every issue, I would hate him only 1% less. And hence the look, I suppose. The 10. Okay, so clearly 10 reasons weren't enough to capture the full scope of just how awful Ted Cruz really is. But for reference, here's a final list of reasons why Ted Cruz is basically the worst on everything we as humans care about. Drum roll, please. Cruz denies climate change, but gets flighty when resulting climate disasters happen. Oh, okay, so I promised to look up 2 words, and I only looked up one, and I think that word was hypocrisy. And that certainly applies here if ThermostatAnon is listening. But there's another word I think ThermostatAnon needs to learn about, and it's more complicated because there are more different varieties of this figure. But let's not worry about all that, and let's see what we can do with this word. Have we talked about this word? I've not. I'm sure we've mentioned it, but I don't know if we've actually investigated it. We'll go ahead and go to the wiki site, because I think anyone who knows the work of a contract entity through Theta will know that the word irony. I'm not reading this from the wiki site. This is just me talking. Irony, that will know that irony comes from the word ironia, and ironia. I can't even pronounce Greek words, but in Greek in Greek comedy, right? There's particularly in Aristophanes, but in other Greek comedy at all, there are stock characters. Like, without getting looking up stock character versus round character versus dramatic character, stock characters were like they're standard in comedy. Roles that certain people play. So the iron was a dissimilator. It says dissimulation here, like who plays the part of the fool, but actually triumphs against the his opposite, the braggart, the vainglorious braggart, the alazon. Right. These are two stock characters in Greek tragedy, and then hence the word irony comes from this character. So there's something like of dissimulation in irony, meaning that things are not as they appear, right? And that's the rhetorical figure that we're talking about. But there are all these different kinds of irony, and let's see that we can identify as the type of irony that's used here. Types of irony. There we want to go. All right, so there's verbal irony, a statement in which the meaning that a speaker employs is sharply different from the meaning that is ostensibly expressed. Okay, so this definition is really important for ThermostatAnon to understand. In verbal ThermostatAnon, are you listening? In verbal irony, a statement in which the meaning that the speaker employs is sharply different from the meaning that is ostensibly expressed. So I think ThermostatAnon, a lot of your problem in identifying my work in the grip of QAnon, in the grip of Q-MAGAnon, in the grip of Q-MAGAnon, as being an example of the incitation of terrorism and violation of harmful policies, was a misrecognition, of this principle, of this figure of verbal, and imagine that it's not just verbal, it's not just the texts, but the images can have this type of expressive, we could say, visually expressive and verbally expressive irony, a statement or image in which the meaning that a speaker or artisan or dramatist employs is sharply different from the meaning that is ostensibly expressed. So that's ThermostatAnon. This is a term that you need to work on and understand as you're doing your job of censorship, okay? So you got that one? Okay, so then here's another one. And this is probably less important for ThermostatAnon, but it could be important for us. Dramatic irony provides the audience with information of which characters are unaware. So basically that's when, like, we in the audience that are watching the representation know more than the characters, right? So for example, in Oedipus, we already know that when he's investigating this crime of the death of Laius, that ultimately it will lead to him. He's the responsible party, right? He killed his father at the Tripleus and Maxitois, the place where the three roads meet, right? And the more that he investigates this crime, like the closer that he comes to destroying himself, right? And that's dramatic irony right there. And it can be comic, or it can create anxiety and tension, right? And create a psychological effect on the part of the if we know the monster, like if we know Ted Cruz is hiding around the corner and he's got those big teeth and he's going to jump out at us, but so we avoid that, there's no dramatic irony. But if we don't know that and someone watching knows that, then there's like a lot of dramatic irony, right? Like, because they know that Ted Cruz is there and they want to warn us, but they can't because they're in a different universe than we are. They're because of the fourth wall, right? And you're like yelling at them, like, "Hey, don't go over there! Don't go over Ted Cruz with his big teeth and his barbarian beard. He's come back from Cancun. He's got the National Rifle Association with him, so that they're supported by this artillery but you can't hear him because of the fourth wall. That's dramatic irony right there. Cosmic irony. Sometimes also called the irony of fate, presents. Okay, so this also, like, we keep coming back to Oedipus, right? But okay, so Oedipus, like, he leaves, right? He leaves his hometown and he gets on the road and he's going to Thebes, and before he gets to Thebes and before he encounters the Sphinx, at least in one version of the story of Oedipus, he's walking and he reaches the Tripleus and Maxitois, the place of where the three roads meet, and of course all the irony of fate is loaded in the place where the three roads meet. Why? Because who are the fates in Greek mythology? There's three of them, right? Okay, you get how that symbolically all works out. So the cosmic irony is he was told that the Sibyl, right, that he goes to learn about his future and about himself,
tells him he's going to, murder his mother. I mean, sorry, I got it backwards. He's going to murder his mother and he's going to marry his father. And so he wants to avoid this. But he doesn't realize that he's adopted, right? And he's going to murder his actual father and marry his actual mother. And so he leaves his home so that this won't happen. And that's the irony of fate. That's cosmic irony, that in order to escape the fate, that the Sibyl, informed him that, was his destiny, that he meets his fate in the Tripleus Moxtois, the place of the three roads. And fate is even inscribed, right, within the symbolic value of that place as a place of three, the three fates in Greek mythology. Right? Okay. This form of irony also gives metaphysical significance, whatever, and then they talk about Kierkegaard, okay, like, and these existentialist philosophers, right? Okay, so this is another one we're looking for. Romantic irony is closely related to cosmic irony, and sometimes the two are treated interchangeably. Romantic, but you can see how the example that I'm going to give here is more romantic irony than it is cosmic irony, and Oedipus is more cosmic. And that whole like symbolism of the fates and everything like raises it to the level of the cosmic, right? Romantic irony is distinct, however, and that is it is the author who assumes the role of the cosmic force. The narrator of Tristram Shandy is one example. The term is closely associated with Schlegel and the early German Romantics, and in their hands it assumed a metaphorical significance similar to cosmic irony in the hands of Kierkegaard. There's also central importance in the literary theory of new criticism and It doesn't really give a very good, provide a very good example or give a very good definition. But let's look at this and see if we can figure out if there's any irony going on. He denies climate change, but gets fidgety when resulting climate disasters happen. So in a sense, he's the author of his own irony here, right? He doesn't believe in climate change, but does things like go to Cancun when there are climate, disasters. And there's a certain amount of irony there. And it's the irony of what we've discussed recently in consuming the apple of ignorance, right? So that you can have these contradictory ideas in your belief system and allow them to exist at the same time, so that you can deny climate change, but then you can experience it and you can react to it, and you can try to escape it, right? But then when you return to Texas, you vote against the best interests of your constituents and deny climate change again. And then when things get bad, you just get on your little plane and you go to Cancun, and then you come back, and then when there's a bill like that talks about how we can have disaster relief, you vote against it, and then when there's another disaster, you get on your little plane and then you go back to Cancun, right? Now there's some kind of irony there, I think, as well as hypocrisy, right? And being the author of his own irony, like that would be an example of romantic irony, okay? Let's see, but gets flighty when resulting climate disasters happen, voted against fixing student loans, introduced, this doesn't involve romantic irony, ThermostatAnon, if you're listening, voted against fixing student loans, unless he has a student loan. I don't know. Maybe he does. I mean, it wouldn't be surprising. So this would be ironic and hypocritical if Ted Cruz, actually had student loans and, didn't have the ability to pay them back. But he does have the ability to pay them back because he got all the money from the NRA and other, firearm and rifle associations. So that's not a problem. So this probably isn't ironic and hypocritical for him because he got all that money from these organizations and then voted against regulations that would protect his constituents. And all the gun violence that goes on in Texas, including mass shootings in schools, et cetera, which is the leading killer of children at this time, right? Is gun violence. So more children die now in this day and age than by violence, by gun violence through the use of firearms, whether that's intentional murder or accident or whatnot, than are killed in car accidents or as a result of drug use or some disease or anything else. So it's the single largest killer of children in our nation. And then it changes when you go up a little level, and young adulthood is I think the highest killer of young adult, particularly males in our in America is fentanyl, but for children it is gun violence. All right, so let's go back to our list. But for reference, here's a final list of reasons why Ted Cruz is basically the worst on everything we as human beings care about. Drum roll, please. Cruz denies climate change, but gets flighty when resulting climate disasters happen, voted against fixing student loans, introduced a bill to make it harder to vote, but overthrows elections anyway. I guess it wasn't, hard enough, attacked the Voting Rights Act, decried Black Lives Matter, sneakily passed school voucher, opposes net neutrality, led the charge to deny Texas couples marriage equality, and defended state-sponsored discrimination against LGBTQ plus people. And then it says here, and this is not us, so don't blame us, for slander, because I'm not saying it, and I won't even repeat it. But it's probably true. Let's see. Take action. It'll be therapeutic. Yeah. And then once again, just verifying. We're not the only ones, that have referred to Mr. Ted Cruz as a barbarian, and suggested that he was terrible.